Welcome back to the Fish Files. Today we get to explore one of my favorite families of fish, actually technically a genus of fish called Corydoras. I think every single community fish tank and cichlid tank can really benefit from a small pack of these Corydoras. And there's quite a few varieties of Corydoras. They range everywhere from 1/2 inch little Pygmy cories to 5 inches with the giant Cory multiradiatus. We happen to have 18 different species in the warehouse at this point in time, so I'm not going to make you guys look at all of them. We'll rush through a few of them. I want to give you a sense of just how many color patterns and sizes and varieties there are to this little family of catfish. Speaking of the family of catfish or genus of catfish, there are 150 scientifically named Corydoras. We have 15 of them here today. There are 150 unnamed Corydoras that have been discovered and been assigned temporary names, basically temporary numbers, C-0123, C-106, C-27. We have 3 of those today. They haven't been assigned scientific names yet. They have been assigned a code so that the people in the hobbyist, when they're caught in Venezuela and Colombia, Brazil, Corydoras are everywhere throughout the Amazon basin. We can identify them when we bring them in for the aquarium trade here in the United States and Europe and Asia. The C number comes from these unassigned C numbers from the DATS magazine. It's not from the zoological community. It's from DATZ, a German publisher that's been around for 100 years. They're also the ones responsible for the L numbers. Those are the numbers we assign. We talked about when we went through plecos. L, for instance, 200 is the green phantom pleco, and which has the same exact scientific name as the blue phantom pleco, both the same species names. So how do you tell them apart? Give them different L numbers, because the scientific name isn't going to tell you if it's a blue phantom or a green phantom. Therefore, for the fishermen and the people who collect them, send them onwards to the hobby trade, we assigned L numbers. Same thing's going on with Corydoras. That's quick note on what happens with cories. So let's look at some of the cories. I think I probably have a dozen or so species in the warehouse right now of the 160 scientifically named species. And I actually have a couple of the unnamed newer species. There's about 150 of those that just have C numbers, which I'll talk about later in the show. So we keep our cories in one general area in the warehouse. So we have about around 1,000 tanks. Each area has its own basic area for the fish. We heat the whole warehouse. So the top fish have the angelfish, the tetras, the fish that need warmer water, because in nature they inhabit the upper third region of the what would you call it? It's not a fish tank, but the third region of the water, the body of water. The middle where the cichlids inhabit, that's where we keep the cichlids in the warehouse, and the catfish go on the bottom. And loaches and eels. So cories are here on the bottom. Cories can come in any size from a 1/2 inch for a Pygmy cory. There's 3 types of Pygmy cories. I have 1 in the warehouse today. To 4.5 inches, which is a Cory multiradiatus. That's the biggest of them all. It's a subset of the Brochus splendens or emerald green cory, but they get 2 inches bigger than the emerald green cory. I don't have either one of those big giant cories today. I thought we had 18. We got 18. Actually, I was hoping we had like 20, but we don't have Brochus splendens or Cory habrosus for you today. And I would love to show Cory multiradiatus, the largest cory of them all, but then that gets up to 5 inches. I've had them in at 4.5 inches. Big cories. If you get your hands on those, they're great for aquariums. Cories do not eat fish. They're nibblers, so they'll nibble off of maybe dead fish if they're on the bottom of the tank and you don't catch them. But cories are the most peaceful catfish you're ever going to find. Let's start looking at a few of them. This is a popular wild-caught cory. This is Cory punctatus. Cory punctatus is not a generally bred cory, and it has a really nice leopard pattern with black dorsal fins, so it's also called the black sail cory. And if you put, like all cories, if you put 2, 3, 4, 6 together, they'll all school together in the aquarium. They're not technically a schooling fish, but they do run in packs. This is a fun one, and cories are easy to talk about because any of these cories I'm pouring in here, you can feed them the same food, they behave the same, they have the same requirements. There's very little differentiation, except of course these ones. Almost all cories handle temperatures well up to 80. Probably only the stir-by cory handles temperatures up in discus tank area. So you want cories in a discus tank where you're in the mid 80s. Cory stir-by is probably the best bet for that. This one is very interesting. It was caught in Brazil. It's called a orange laser cory. And technically it's a Cory aeneus, one of the most popular cories in the universe. And some variations though, and these are natural variations, will have a reflective red stripe, a reflective gold stripe, and a reflective green stripe. Oh, I can't say that very fast. They have a reflective red stripe, screw it. Okay, these guys are the orange stripe. Orange stripe are a little more expensive than the other two. There is a green stripe cory that's now being bred in Indonesia and shipped to the US. Very expensive and very small. I prefer the wild ones. They come in just as hardy, actually I think hardier because they're larger. And even though it's an expensive cory to buy, it really pops in the fish tank. Because I'm not kidding, that reflective band, it's really almost artificial looking, but it's a natural variation in the wild. So even though it's the same species, they just put a variation at the end, a little V at the end of Cory aeneus to designate that there's something different about this color pattern. Let's go right to an unnamed cory. These cories are found in Colombia, and they are, by the way, the laser cories are generally caught in the Brazil region of the Amazon basin. These guys are CW106. That's their designation. They do not have a scientific name yet. Eventually, they'll be assigned one. There's a long backlog. It'd be really cool if my name was on one of them, but I have never discovered anything. These guys, and we went through about how you get named. If you want to know how fish do get discovered and named, you need to see one of my previous episodes with Heiko Blair, and he walks through that whole process. But these are large cories. These guys get about 3.5 inches. They get a little bit of orange, but mainly they're known just because of their big cream colors and black mask faces and black on the back half of their body. Pretty cories, but expensive because they are rare and basically, you know, a new discovery for the trade. So typically these guys will retail for $40, $39, $40, whereas a typical aeneus cory, Paleotis cory, your bread and butter cories that you'd find in like Petco. So cories, I don't know if you saw that, but he ran up and grabbed a little air. Cories are both air breathers and gill breathers in the water because cories naturally inhabit slow moving streams and waterways that can have a lot of silt built up in the bottom. So a lot of it is deprived of oxygen. So they've evolved to be able to breathe air when they are in that kind of environment. As you see here, I don't have an air stone, but there's plenty of air in here. I aerated like crazy, pouring the water in. You still may catch them as we go through the show, coming up and taking a little gulp of air and then going back down. And really, if you like seeing these fish, please subscribe, and we're going to keep it coming to you. There's so many more families, so many other species, some rare species, things that are just fantastic for the aquarium. We'd love to show you. So please subscribe. And you know, if you want to purchase any of these, you can go to aquariumfishsale.com. These are CW27s, again, an unnamed species. These guys are found in Venezuela and Colombia. These ones are spectacular fish because they have all the pieces of coloration patterns that people like to see in cories. They have a leopard pattern, they have a black banded pattern, they have a mask like a bandit cory, Cory mete. But these again don't have a scientific name. They are 27s, CW27s. And like Corydoras, they have orange on their bodies. Not in the same area, but they really have. Corydoras is a very striking color pattern. This is about as striking a color pattern outside of the laser cories as you're going to get with a Corydora. So I'm going to just highlight some of the features that Corydoras share in common. One is the lateral line. All fish have this actually. This is how they sense movement in the aquarium. They can smell, they can see, but this is basically how they, for lack of a better word, hear. It's a sensatory line that goes along their body. This is an interesting species because his lateral line actually reflects green. I think it's a kind of neat. So that's why I decided to highlight and show what a lateral line, about where a lateral line is on any fish. So that's his lateral line. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put all 3 of the most popular cories, probably the only cories Petco and PetSmart ever really carry, into this tank and just explain them to save some time, because I don't want cories to become boring, because they're such a cool little aquarium species, and I don't want to be the guy responsible for making them uncool. And if you put 2 or 3 species together, they'll still school together, but they tend to like to school with their same species, but they will school interspecies wise if you want to put 3 or 4 different color patterns and different species in your aquarium. But you're sure to get a gang together if you put the same species together in your aquarium. The 3 most common species of cories are Cory paleatus. They are also called the salt and pepper cory because of that kind of a salt and pepper body pattern, little black and white splotches all over its body. Albino cories, which is that Cory aeneus we spoke of. It's the very common type of cory, but a lot of variations come off of that. The laser cories is one. Green cories is another. Bronze cory is another. These are albino cories of the species Cory aeneus. And all albino fish, you can tell usually by their pink bodies, is kind of obvious, but also by their red eyes. These are really interesting. As they grow older, they get very big and fat. Albino cories can get up to 3 inches. And then we have Corydulii. Corydulii have a leopard body pattern, leopard spots, and a black dorsal fin. Corydulii is typically sells for $8.90, around there, a little under $10 in the pet stores. The Corydulii is tank raised now. So these are tank raised. I can get them a little bigger from the wild, but it's the same fish. And because they're tank raised, you'll see them in some of the national chains. That's probably the only good leopard pattern fish you're going to find in one of the national chains. If you want to see some good variation of cories, you're going to have to go to an independent aquarium store. Cories, if you want to keep your cories happy, they like to explore, they like to stay active. And what's nice about cories, unlike most catfish, they're diurnal. They'll be active at night, but they're also active during the day. They tend to just rest at random times. They also do like to have hiding places, particularly if there's some curious or larger, more aggressive fish in the tank. They're unlikely to hurt a cory unless the fish is so big it can fit in its mouth. So that's the only real thing you have to avoid when it comes to other tank mates for corydoras. They won't harm any other fish. The Cory name, corydora, stands for, let's see, Cory stands for helmet and Dora stands for armor. It's Greek for helmet armor. That means basically these are very tough little catfish. They have scales all over their body that make it very difficult for predator fish to penetrate or want to devour. One of the most favored patterns for cories in general is the leopard pattern. A leopard pattern is a spotted and sometimes striped and masked and black fin, sometimes no black fin pattern on different cories. And when you're trying to identify them in the pet store, even for the pet store owner, it can be very difficult sometimes. So what I did is I put 4 leopard pattern catfish in here. I put in the Cory agassizi, the Cory sturbai, the Cory julii, and the Cory schwarzi. All 4 of these have the same leopard pattern. In fact, I could even add the Cory punctatus, but I don't want to make it too difficult for us. So I want to see if you guys can figure out which is which. I'll tell you how you tell in the pet store. When you go for the Cory sturbai, look for a little orange on the ventral fins and a really nice fine leopard pattern throughout the fish. And Cory sturbais are a few bucks more than the other cories I mentioned, and a little finer pattern. The Cory julii, the most popular cory that you're going to find in most of the pet stores after probably the albino cory, has that same leopard pattern with a black sail fin and a more distinct smaller dots than the Cory punctatus I showed before, called the black sail fin cory. Cory julii have a black sail fin, but it's not the whole fin, and it has a leopard pattern. So remember, sturbai, no black, just spots all over. Cory julii, little black on the fin, spots all over. And the Cory schwarzi. Cory schwarzis have a little longer snout. They have lines that go along. Julii, I should say, also have lines that go along its body too, along with the leopard spots. But the Cory schwarzi have more pronounced lines, and it has a bit of a mask on its face, on its head. And then last but not least, the Cory agassizi. Cory agassizi, similar to Cory stirbai, a little bit more of a black band down the center, but a big leopard patterned fish. So Cory stirbai, no black band. Cory agassizi, black band down the center. So let's give a minute and see if you can figure out which one's which in this tank. Cory stirbai, which one's a Cory julii, which one's a Cory schwarzei, and which one's a Cory agassizi. Putting live plants in an aquarium is very popular right now in the hobby. For whatever reason, I have 3 fish that quite a few of the aquarium stores that sell a lot of freshwater plants get a lot of from me. And they're the Panda Cory, the red sailfin Venezuelan red sailfin Cory, and the Pygmy Cory. So I'm going to drop in the Pygmy Cory right now. These are the smallest Cories. So hopefully producer will be able to catch some because they will probably scurry in between these little rocks I have in here. There's 3 types of Pygmy Cories that you'll find in the trade. One you'll really hardly ever see. It's called the Cory hystatus. And that comes from Brazil. It has a little black spot on its tail and a cream body. If it doesn't have those features, it's not a hystatus. Don't be fooled. This is Cory pygmaeus, the most common pygmy Cory. It has a long lateral black line with a little dot at the end of its tail. The other Cory I usually carry, I just don't have any today in the warehouse, is Cory habrosus, which is also called the dwarf salt and pepper Cory because it has a color pattern just like that Cory paleatus we showed you earlier, except it's a pygmy version. And those guys get, even though it's a pygmy version, they get up to 1 inch in length. The pygmy Corys, pygmaeus, only get max out about 3/4 of an inch. They always stay small, but they're fun to get a little pack of them, say 8 to 10 of them, and they'll all run around the plant leaves and in your aquarium. Angelfish, maybe only if they're jumbo, could cause some problems. All the rest of the fish will leave them alone. You won't have any problems with gourami, no tetras or barbs or dwarf cichlids will harm them. So yeah, but they might be food for larger aggressive cichlids and like any jumbo critters in the fish tank. So as long as you have fish, they can't just pull them into their mouths. These Pygmy Corys are great for the fish tank. And they're great for even a little tank like this, little nano tank that we featured building on a previous show. Pygmy Corys are great for this kind of feature, except if I put them in there, I'd probably pull out my little orange snow lobster that I have in there. So next I selected a couple species that used to be very, very expensive, but now very prevalent in most really good aquarium stores, and that's the Panda Cory and the red sailfin Venezuelan Cory. And for whatever reason, very popular with planted tanks as well. These guys are juveniles. The Panda Corys have black and cream body, and I guess that's where you get the panda from. And the red sailfin Venezuelan Corys have a copper body with red vinage that gets brighter and brighter as they get older. These guys are juveniles, and like all juveniles, they don't display their colors as well as they will when they're adults. So this is a standard feature for most freshwater aquarium fish because they want to stay camouflaged as long as they can. But at some point they need to find a mate and show their true colors. But I think these guys are old enough that you can see the patterns on these guys. In the same theme as the Panda Cory, we have skunk Corys, bandit Corys. Based on their patterns, they just have fun common names. Skunk Cory, scientific name is Cory arcuatus, but the skunk Cory has 2 black bands and gives it kind of a skunk pattern. So it's a fun little Cory. Behaves just like the other Corys. Oh, and on feeding Corys, if you're worried that not enough food is falling down for your Cory, whether you feed them sinking pellets or flake food, then if you want to get more food to the Corys particularly, then you can just feed them catfish food. It's little pellets for cories, for plecos, and it'll sink to the bottom, give them some of the food they might be missing. Cichlid pellets is another way to make sure something gets down there for your cories. Most of the time they spend their day foraging for food anyways, and they're great for scavenging and getting all that stuff digested that some of the fish might miss. And in that way, it keeps the tank a bit cleaner than it would without cories. And I want to conclude our last featured cories with two entrants that are now tank raised. It used to be fairly difficult to find in the aquarium trade, and that was because they're wild caught. So very expensive, and wild caught fish get imported in frequently, so they're harder to find. In this case, I'm showing the Cory Adolphi, which is mainly known for its orange kind of saddle head, and that makes it a very desirable Cory, because not a lot of Cories have a bright orange pattern, though you've already seen two. And these are juvenile Cory Adolphi, so they're not really displaying the orange. You can see a bit of it from the top view, but from the side view, I really don't see the orange pattern that's going to be coming out on its all around its head as it grows older. And then we also have the Cory simulus, which I really like for its common name, which is called smudge pot, the smudge pot Cory, because on the lower third of its body it has I don't know if anyone's actually seen smudge pots, because they're probably, everyone watching this is younger than me, but smudge pots are little black pots, iron pots, that would give off a smudge gas, basically burning tar inside of it, and they use that for road construction to let people know that you can't use that lane, and you're not going to see smudge pots. But it came from smudge pots that you'll never see, but you will see a smudge pot Cory, and in fact you're going to see a couple of them right now in this little fish tank. They're pretty because they got a front two-thirds is a cream color, and the back third is it's a bluish black. So you can find most of these Cories for under $10 online or in your pet store. I would say probably petco.com, PetSmart. You're not going to find 99% of the Cories I just showed. Well, that's probably the wrong percentage. 80% of the Cories I just showed, you're not going to find in those stores. But if you go to aquariumfishsale.com, you go to a nice independent aquarium store, you are going to find most of those selections. Also be very wary of some of these newer tank raised species I was showing, and some of the CWs. You'll see some of them are overpriced, particularly online. I think you find better pricing in the aquarium stores themselves. There's a few out there that stay up with the current pricing trends and have fair pricing. There's a few Cories, obviously there's 150, so I didn't show you 135 of them today. This gives you a good idea though of all the basic patterns and sizes that are out there for your aquarium. And so I hope that in order to utilize these guys, you get an aquarium.